So we are reading Power versus Force by Dr. David Hawkins. We are on chapter 4, page number 82 of the book and page number
16 of the PDF.
So we are in energy level 175, which is the level of pride.
Energy level 175, pride. Pride, which calibrates at 175, has enough energy to run the United States Marine Corps. It is the level aspired to by the majority of our kind today. People feel positive as they reach this level, in contrast to the lower energy fields. This rise in self-esteem is a balm to all the pain experienced at lower levels of consciousness. Pride looks good and knows it. It struts its stuff in the parade of life. Pride is at a far enough remove from shame, guilt, or fear that to rise, for instance, out of the despair of the ghetto to the pride of being a Marine is an enormous jump. Pride as such generally has a good reputation and is socially encouraged. Yet, as we see from the chart of the levels of consciousness, it is sufficiently negative to remain below the critical level of 200. This is why pride feels good only in contrast to the lower levels.
Okay, so pride is at 175. It is still below the threshold level of 200, right? Now, pride can feel very good if you're coming from the bottom. So now if you're in shame and you shift to pride, or if you're in guilt and you shift to pride, or you're in apathy and you shift to pride, if you're in anger and you shift to pride, it feels good because there's a higher energy charge to the level of pride. But the clicker with pride is that it can very easily slip into the ego state, right? Pride can make you do things that otherwise you would not do. Like, there are so many movies where in the army, right, in the Marine Corps or in the armies, they do a lot of stuff inside the army and they get away with it because of the pride of the unit, right? They don't want to compromise the pride of the unit. So all those things, aggression can also come in when you are operating out of pride.
The problem, as we all know, is that pride goeth before a fall. Pride is defensive and vulnerable because it is dependent upon external conditions, without which it can suddenly revert to a lower level. The inflated ego is vulnerable to attack. Pride remains weak because it can be knocked off its pedestal into shame, which is the threat that fires the fear of loss of pride.
Shivankar, you need to come closer to your mic. Okay, so as I already said, right, pride can result in a fall because you are aspiring, there's that egoism attached with pride. If you're not going to get that balm, of praise, etc., and people don't look up to you, you will feel hurt and then you can fall down. It can also make you do stuff which can result in you getting ostracated, right? So get kicked out of society, etc., where people, when you're too proud, it can really create a problem for you. You don't listen. When you operate out of pride, your capacity to listen diminishes because you're so full of yourself that you can't see the viewpoint of the other person.
Pride is divisive and gives rise to factionalism. The consequences are costly. Man has habitually died, for pride armies still regularly slaughter each other for that aspect of pride called nationalism. Religious wars, political terrorism, and zealotry, the ghastly history of the Middle East and Central Europe, are all the price of pride, which all of society pays.
So again, pride, what does pride do? You start associating your astitva, your state of being, with an organization, with something. You start tagging yourself to that, and then you will do anything to protect it, right? If anyone points a finger or anyone questions anything about the organization, you'll be ready to kill, you'll be ready to die for that, right? Now that is operating from the left side of the grid, because you're not willing to listen to the other point of view, you're not willing to listen to constructive criticism, you're not willing to adjust at all. So when you are operating out of pride, adjustment goes out of the window. It माने ये है या नहीं है, that's it. So they are ready to maro ya kato. That's the basic game when you are operating out of pride.
The downside of pride is arrogance and denial. These characteristics block growth. In pride, recovery from addictions is impossible because emotional problems or character defects are denied. The whole problem of denial is one of pride. Thus, pride is a very sizable block to the acquisition of real power, which displaces pride with true stature and prestige.
So as we are talking, right, you become arrogant. You're not willing to listen to the other person. You think you're always right. Your way is the only way. There is no other way. You're not willing to adjust. You're not willing to transform. So as soon as you get into that syndrome, then growth cannot happen, because you cannot imagine or believe or accept that there is anything better than the state at which you are, or your ideas can never be improved on, right? So you get stuck. All growth stops when you start operating out of pride. So it becomes very important for us to really understand whether we are operating from pride or we are operating from higher states of consciousness, which result in growth, because you are looking out to learn, to grow all the time. And then that shifts to prestige and what does he say over here? Prestige and stature, right? A proud person ultimately may be respected out of fear also at times, right? But true respect will not be there for a person who operates out of pride.
Energy level 200, courage. At the 200 level, power first appears. When we test subjects at all the energy levels below 200, we find, as can be readily verified, that all go weak. Everyone goes strong in response to the life supportive fields above 200. This is the critical line that distinguishes the positive and negative influences of life. At the level of courage, an attainment of true power occurs. Therefore, it is also the level of empowerment. This is the zone of exploration, accomplishment, fortitude, and determination. At the lower levels, the world is seen as hopeless, sad, frightening, or frustrating. But at the level of courage, life is seen to be exciting, challenging, and stimulating.
So when we reach 200, right, this is when the real growth starts to take place. So when we are talking about empowerment, right, when we are empowering someone, and a person wants to be empowered, then you're willing to take a step forward. You're willing to face the challenge. You're willing to go from the known to the unknown. Now, if you're not willing to go from the unknown to the unknown, growth can never take place, right? So when we come at the level of 200, that is when actually the magic starts to happen, right? We start learning new things. We are accepting. We are ready for the adventure. That becomes very, very important.
Courage implies the willingness to try new things and deal with the vicissitudes of life. At this level of empowerment, one is able to cope with and handle effectively the opportunities of life. At 200, for instance, there is the energy to learn new job skills. Growth and education become attainable goals. There is the capacity to face fears or character defects and to grow despite them. And anxiety does not cripple endeavor as it would at lower stages of evolution. Obstacles which defeat people whose consciousness is below 200 act as stimulants to those who have evolved into the first level of true power.
So as we come into the level of 200, anxiety starts to drop, and an excitement to see what we can do, right, can start to manifest. So again, when we keep talking of the words, trying and attempting, when we come into the level of 200, we are shifting from trying to attempting. We are looking forward to what we are doing. We will give it our best shot and then see what happens, right? So this is where the karma yogi really comes in. They're willing to do the karma and not be really hankering over the reward. When you're operating from the lower levels of consciousness, you will be always looking out for the reward. So the reward means more than the act of doing the thing. As we come into courage, the act starts to become more important rather than the reward. So that is why you can try new things. You can attempt new things. You are willing to learn. You're willing to grow. You're willing to understand what are the weaknesses that you have, and you're willing to accept them and transcend them, right? So this is where the true growth starts to happen at the level of 200.
People at this level put back into the world as much energy as they take. At lower levels, populations as well as individuals drain energy from society without reciprocating. Because accomplishment results in positive feedback, self reward and esteem become progressively self reinforcing. This is where productivity begins.
So what are we talking about here, right? Here there is a give and take. At the lower levels of consciousness, it is a take. You're grabbing more than what you're giving. That is what leads to the depletion. You're constantly. So when you look at all the control dramas are below 200. So when you look at pride, the person operating out of pride will be the intimidator. They will intimidate people, right, to grab power. That I am this, you have to give me the power. So all control dramas happen below 200, like what we read in Celestine prophecies. When you come into 200, you are able to transcend the control dramas. So then what happens? When you transcend the control drama, as we again read in the Celestine prophecy, that I am giving to the person is giving back to me. So the energy field grows. But if we are attempting to grab from the other person, at some point in time, the other person is going to stop the grabbing and grab back. And that's when the conflict starts, and you start doing the jugalbandi between the control drama attitudes of poor me and intimidator and aloof and interrogator. The jugalbandi, the damru starts to play, right? We need to transcend that, and that can only happen at the level of 200.
The collective level of consciousness of mankind remained at 190 for many centuries and curiously only jumped to its current level of 204 within the last decade.
So basically, there has been some growth, and the collective consciousness of human society now is just hovering around 200. It's very near 200, but it's gone up. That's why growth has started to take place, right? Wars are happening, but the war is literally ignored, but the people are focusing on growth, right? Courageous things are taking place. New discoveries are taking place. This has started to happen, but still we are only at 200. We are not moving above that yet.
Energy level 250, neutrality. Energy becomes very positive as we get to the level which we have termed neutral because it is epitomized by release from the positionality which typifies lower levels. Below 250, consciousness tends to see dichotomies and take on rigid positions, an impediment in a world which is complex and multifactorial rather than black and white.
So when you come into neutral, you start accepting the grays, the maybes, right? It is not that this is this and this is that. You start becoming more flexible. You start becoming more adaptable, more amiable to creating shifts within yourself to, to see what is working and what is not working. It's not that this is my idea in the level of pride, right? This is my idea and this is it. There is nothing else. Over here, the adjustment, the adjustability starts to take place, which allows you to grow further, right? Because if you can't adjust, you can't micro tune, then you'll never be able to really achieve what you want to achieve.
Taking such positions creates polarization, and polarization in turn creates opposition and division. As in the martial arts, a rigid position becomes a point of vulnerability. That which does not bend is liable to break. Rising above barriers or oppositions which dissipate one's energies, the neutral condition allows for flexibility and non judgmental, realistic appraisal of problems. To be neutral means to be relatively unattached to outcomes. Not getting one's way is no longer experienced as defeating, frightening, or frustrating.
So now this is very important, right? As we come to neutrality, we drop the attachment to the result. We drop the attachment to our point of view. That is what allows us to start adjusting. And when we start adjusting, automatically things start to move better. When we are rigid, right? When we are stuck with our idea, someone else may be stuck with their idea, and then the jhamela starts, the warring starts that no, I am right and you're wrong, and this and that starts. But if you are willing to accept, you're willing to see the other person's point of view, then things automatically start to get better, right? I was reading this book long time back. I think I mentioned it before, How to Win Friends and Influence People. The main take from that book is that put yourself in the other person's shoe. And when we reach neutrality, we are able to do that. We are able to see this thing from the other person's point of view, and the other person's point of view may carry some merit. So if we are willing to see it from the other guy's point of view, we can adjust our take, our stand to make it better for everyone concerned.
At the neutral level, a person can say, well, if I don't get this job, then I'll get another. This is the beginning of inner confidence. Sensing one's power, one is not easily intimidated. One is not driven to prove anything. The expectation that life, with its ups and downs, will be basically okay if one can roll with the punches is a 250 level attitude.
So now we are starting to jack into the flow. We are starting to move with the flow. We are allowing things to manifest. Rather than making them manifest, we are allowing them to manifest at this level of consciousness. We are becoming more accepting. If something happens, very good. If it doesn't, very good. So that small story that we've been talking about, this too shall pass, right? So we are coming into that state of consciousness. We are willing to accept what is and jack into the flow, getting into effortlessness from effortfulness. You'll find that whenever you're operating below 200 or around 200, you will be still making an effort. At this level of consciousness, the effort starts to drop.
Sorry, I think I read the wrong paragraph. I have to read from energy level 250.
You've
Energy level 250, neutrality.
already read it. You're in the right.
Okay.
They've done it again, actually. They've copied it.
Okay. People at neutrality have a sense of well-being, capability to live in the world. This is the level of safety. People at the neutral level are easy to get along with, safe to be around and associate with, because they are not interested in conflict, competition, or guilt. They are comfortable and basically undisturbed emotionally. This attitude is non judgmental and does not lead to any need to control other people's behaviors. Correspondingly, because neutral folk value freedom, they are hard to control.
Okay, so now this becomes very important. A neutral guy is not rigid with his position or her position. She is in an attitude of live and let live, right? They don't want to be controlled. They want to do their own thing. They want to become empowered and they want to experience the experience for the experience, right? So it naturally, if the guy is willing to do anything and he's willing to be, he's not wanting to control you, he's not wanting to be controlled. So naturally, it becomes difficult to control these people. And these people are basically safe because they are allowing you to be, right? So if you are in their company, you will have the freedom to act because they also want the freedom to act. They are not ones who will follow the rules and regulations with rigidity, but again, they are not also willing to break any rules and regulations just for the heck of breaking the rules and regulations. They are all right with what is. Basically, that's the game. They are at peace. You'll find that serenity, that contented attitude will also be there in these people.
Energy level 310, willingness. This very positive level of energy may be seen as the gateway to the higher levels. Whereas jobs, for instance, are done adequately at the neutral level, at the level of willingness, work is done well and success in all endeavors is common. Growth is rapid here. These are people chosen for advancement. Willingness implies that one has overcome inner resistance to life and is committed to participation.
So this becomes important, right? Now, these are the people who start saying yes to what comes in front of them. We've been talking about this a lot, right? Start saying yes. They are willing to do what needs to be done. They are willing to accept that the universe is giving them what is the best for them. And they say yes to what comes in. So as soon as you start saying yes, you start progressing, you start achieving, right? Because there is no resistance. There is no thinking that ye hoga ki nahi hoga. Arey karke to dekhe yaar, jaise hoga ho jayega. So, you start moving, you start progressing. You are not stagnated. When we are in resistance and we say no, can't, won't, why, all these questions, when they start to come, then we are blocking our own progress. With these people, they will say yes most of the time.
Below the 200 calibration, people tend to be close-minded. But at this level, people become genuinely friendly. But by this level, 310, a great opening occurs. At this level, people become genuinely friendly, and social and economic success seem to follow automatically. The willing are not troubled by unemployment. They will take any job when they have to, or create a career or self-employment for themselves. They do not feel demeaned by service jobs or by starting at the bottom. They are helpful to others and contribute to the good of society. They are also willing to face inner issues and do not have major learning blocks.
So again, they are totally open, right? They're open to learn. They're open to grow. And everything is good for them. They are not, ego takes a back seat. There is no ego. Whatever comes up, they'll do it. right? Whether it's for polishing of shoes or whether it's cleaning a toilet or whatever needs to be done at that point in time, they will be willing to do whatever is necessary and just go with the flow, right? And naturally, if you're willing to do anything, then there will be always something available for you to do. It's always going to be there. And naturally, when you're willing to do everything, you're willing to cooperate, you're willing to support the other person, these people will be great guys to have around you when you are doing anything. Because in my view, that these guys can become exceptional troubleshooters also, because whenever you need them, they are available. They can do multitasking. They can do things which others can't do. Why? Only because they are open to doing rather than thinking, right? When we are doing biofield tuning, I'm finding this a lot now. Yesterday also it came up that, it get the sun star gets stuck at the mouth level. Immediately the thing is that thinking too much, all round thinking like a broken down record player, but not moving. They're not willing to do, right? That's why it gets stuck here. These guys will be willing to do anything. You tell them, do this, Patak se, they will do it. No resistance, no argument, no discussion, just do it. So already the job is over. Before you know it, the job is over. Now, if that's your attitude, then automatically success will follow. There is no resistance left in the person operating at 310, the willingness level.
At this level, self-esteem is high and is reinforced by positive feedback from society in the forms of recognition, appreciation, and reward. Willingness is sympathetic and responsive to the needs of others. Willing people are builders of and contributors to society. With the capacity to bounce back from adversity and learn from experience, they tend to become self-correcting. Having let go of pride, they are willing to look at their defects and learn from others. At the level of willingness, people become excellent students. They are easily trainable and represent a considerable source of power for society.
So naturally, if you're willing to do, you will be appreciated. You will, people will start looking up to you. They will ask you for help, right? If you're not willing to help a person, why will a person ask you? So when we look at the gateway affirmation, the third part is asking for help. Now, who do we ask from help from? Someone who is better than us or knows more than us. And naturally, the fact is, are they willing to help us? So over here, these people are always willing to help out. They are always willing to support the other person to the best of their ability. And naturally, when a person is willing to support, willing to learn, willing to grow, their contribution to society starts to automatically get enhanced. So over here, what I would like you all also to really assess for yourself, right? These are all the characters of the different levels of consciousness. Now, one of the ways in which we can raise our level of consciousness is to actually come to an understanding, where are we operating from? What is the level that I am in? And what do I want to aspire for? Where will I find my balance, right? It's not possible that everyone become a Sant Mahatma, but we can raise the bar. And when we know the characteristics of a certain level of consciousness and we become aware of it, it gives us an opportunity to shift that state where we would like to be, right? So this becomes very important. So observe yourself. One is, you can do the ring test and figure out which level you're in. But the point here is that to aspire for a higher level of consciousness is why we are here, right? So knowing the characteristics of the higher level of consciousness allows us to tag ourselves. At least it gives us a laksh, it gives us an aim, right? Having a laksh in life, and especially when we are in the lower levels of consciousness, become important. As we progress to the higher levels, the laksh also drops, because now you're self-generating, you're connecting with the universal consciousness, and things start auto happening for you. You don't need to push them to happen. It'll just happen. But at the lower levels of consciousness, we need to focus on raising our level, right? We need to be aware of it and have a goal in life. So that becomes very important here.
Energy level 350, acceptance. At this level of awareness, a major transformation takes place with the understanding that one is oneself the source and creator of the experience of one's life. Taking such responsibility is distinctive of this degree of evolution, characterized by the capacity to live harmoniously with the forces of life.
So now again we come back to what we read in Ho'oponopono in Zero Limits, right? So what was the basic tenet in Ho'oponopono? That you need to take responsibility for yourself. That, and then we are reading in other books, etc., that we create our reality, right? Now we intellectually you may understand that you create your reality, but if you really don't feeling wise accept it, you don't energetically accept it, then you're operating at a lower level. But as soon as you start accepting it, what happens is that anything that is happening to you, it may be very bad situation, but when you accept responsibility that I am the creator of this experience for myself, you put yourself in a position to transcend it. It doesn't hold you back anymore, and you learn from that experience, right? So now that becomes very important. Once we start doing that, then automatically in the most adverse of situations, you can still live in harmony within, right? So we had a talk on Viktor Franklin. We actually had wanted to have a talk on logotherapy, but it turned out to a talk on Viktor Franklin. That guy was stuck in a concentration camp in the Nazi Germany, right? But he still created harmony in his life even in that situation. So I would expect that he would be operating at the 350 level of acceptance. That is why he was able to do that.
All people at levels below 200 tend to be powerless and see themselves as victims at the mercy of life. This stems from a belief that the source of one's happiness or the cause of one's problems is out there. An enormous jump taking back one's own power is completed at this level with the realization that the source of happiness is within oneself. At this more evolved stage, nothing out there has the capacity to make one happy, and love is not something that is given or taken away by another, but is created from within.
So now we take the power within ourselves, right? So whenever we give our happiness or we put our happiness in the other guy's hand, then we are being manipulated by the other person. So whenever we start doing the blame game, right, we are putting the power in the other guy's hand. Now this happens only when we are below 200. The blame game, finger pointing, saying that I did everything, but the circumstances didn't work out. All these factors happen below 200. When you start coming at this level, you will find that even if an adversity is there, you will find another way to do it. Something else will show up which will allow you to achieve what you want to achieve. And things start to roll. They just go on a roll. Without thinking, you can start operating when you come into the level of acceptance, right? Because you have taken the power back. You're being responsible for whatever is happening to you. That allows you to see the bigger picture rather than the small picture where you get stuck in the blame game. Okay. Very important. You've stepped out of the control drama scenario and are moving with full control and authority over your own life.
Acceptance is not to be confused with passivity, which is a symptom of apathy. This form of acceptance allows engagement in life as on life's own terms, without trying to make it conform to any agenda. With acceptance, there is emotional calm and denial is transcended. One new, one new see, one new see things When you see things without distortion or misinterpretation, the context of experience is expanded so that one is capable of seeing the whole picture. Acceptance has to do essentially with balance, proportion, and appropriateness.
So when we come into the level of acceptance, the bigger picture starts to play up. Now, your ego starts to come down, right? So even if something is hurtful to you or detrimental to you from the small guy, but you are seeing the bigger picture, you will do what is good for the whole, right? You will always allow the whole to operate. There is no passive. I mean, you're not passive about things here. You will act, but you will act in the appropriate fashion. What is the appropriate thing to do from a bigger state of consciousness, from a bigger picture perspective, is what you will do. It doesn't matter if it doesn't work for you personally at that time. You will still do it because it is for the greater good. So over here, the greater good really starts to matter.
The individual at the level of acceptance is not interested in determining right or wrong, but instead is dedicated to resolving issues and finding out what to do about problems. Tough jobs do not cause discomfort or dismay. Long term goals take precedence over short term ones. Self discipline and mastery are prominent.
Okay, so what happens? There is no right or wrong. They're always looking at a perspective and seeing whichever perspective of looking at the thing is the way to go, they will take that perspective. So whenever they are put into a problem, they will take a higher view about it and always land up finding a solution. Okay, so this or better starts to operate at this level of consciousness. And naturally, over here, very clearly, he says that the bigger picture is more important for this person than the short-term picture, the smaller picture. So if you're looking at the bigger picture, you're automatically connecting with a long-term destination than a short-term gain, right? You're always looking at the bigger picture.
The individual at the level of acceptance is not interested in determining right or wrong, but instead is dedicated to resolving issues and finding out what to do about problems. Tough jobs do not cause discomfort or dismay. Long term goals take precedence over short term ones. Self discipline and mastery are prominent. At the level of acceptance, we are not polarized by conflict or opposition. We see that other people have the same rights as we do, and we honor equality. While lower levels are characterized by rigidity, at this level, social plurality begins to emerge as a form of resolution of problems. Therefore, this level is free of discrimination or intolerance. There is an awareness that equality does not preclude diversity. Acceptance includes rather than rejects.
Okay, so at the level of acceptance, you're willing. So at the level of acceptance, you are basically willing to accept the ideas of others. You are willing to acknowledge what the other guy is saying. You're willing to look at it from the other guy's perspective, right? So naturally, the balance automatically gets created. You are not looking at getting into conflict. You are willing to understand. You're willing to create a balance. You're willing to create equanimity within yourself and outside yourself also. So if we are operating in equanimity, automatically we start to radiate equanimity all around us. So you'll find that people who are operating at this level, they slow down. They are not in a hurry to do anything. They will be relaxed in whatever they do. It will seem as if they are doing things effortlessly. This is what we find, that when we are looking at it from the heart math perspective, these people have started to operate at the level of inner ease. There is ease in whatever they do. There is no stress involved in what they do. Things are happening around them and we do not know how they are happening, right? So this is the way that a person in at this level of consciousness starts to behave and act. There's a gentleness, there's a flow around them, they're never stressed out, there's no hankering, etc. All that starts to drop away.
Energy level 400, reason. Intelligence and rationality rise to forefront when the emotionalism of the lower levels is transcended. Reason is capable of handling large, complex amounts of data and making rapid, correct decisions, of understanding the intricacies of relationships, gradations, and fine distinctions, and of interpretation of symbols as abstract concepts become increasingly important. This is the level of science, medicine, and of generally increased capacity for conceptualization and comprehension.
Okay, so now what is happening here? You are tuning into downloads. You're moving into higher states of consciousness where you're open to receiving downloads. So most scientists, etc., when they are creating, I'm not saying that in every aspect of life they will be operating at 400, right? But the inventors, the people who are creating new processes, are, when they are working and they are open to that, or they are operating at this level of consciousness, the downloads start to take place. When we look at it from the perspective of, when we do Lifeline or we do Exploration 27, and we go into exploring the expanded state of consciousness of Focus 27, there is a planning center over there. And the planning center is planning what ideas to download, what is the downloading to take place. So these people are actually connecting with that state of consciousness to start being able to download stuff, right? You can figure out. So when we are talking about theoretical physicists, they're all operating at the level of 400, where they are manipulating the data in their head and are able to come out with a result, although physically that result may not be possible to create, right? So these people at some level may also be a little disconnected from society, because society is operating at a level of 200, right? So they may go into isolation. They may start living in a world of their own, right? Because they are working at those high levels where there's no resonance with the normal people. So the kind of talk they will do, the people will not understand what they are doing, what they are saying. So a little bit of a disconnect can start taking place over here. Although they will still be amiable, they'll be very nice, they'll be gentle, they'll be very helpful. All those factors will still be there. But a slight disconnect can also start taking place.
Knowledge and education are here sought as capital. Understanding and information are the main tools of accomplishment, which is the hallmark of the 400 level. This is the level of Nobel Prize winners, great statesmen, Supreme Court justices, Einstein, Freud, and many other important figures in the history of thought calibrate here.
So again, basically thinkers, knowledge growers, people who are setting trends for the future. These are the people who are operating at the level of 500. From the scientific, so it is not a spiritualistic point of view yet. Okay, it's still materially based. So material progress and abstract thinkers come at this level.
The shortcomings of this level are failure to clearly distinguish the difference between symbols and what they represent, the confusion between the objective and subjective worlds that limits the understanding of causality. At this level, it is easy to lose sight of the forest for the trees, to become infatuated with concepts and theories, and end up missing the essential point. Intellectualizing can become an end in itself. Reason is limited in that it does not afford the capacity for the discernment of essence or of the critical point of a complex issue.
So, as I said, these people can tend to become aloof because they are so much in their head that they are living in their head only. So, the disconnection from normal objective stuff starts to get cut off. There's a curtailment in that. The subjective, which is inside the head, they can't distinguish between the two. So, something is already happening in the mind. They will assume that it has happened, but it has actually not happened in the physical world, right? But in their mind, it has already happened, and the distinction cannot be made by them. So they get caught up in that dream, right? They are caught up in that dream without accepting what is real. So they lose connection with the base reality.
Reason does not of itself provide a guide to truth. It produces massive amounts of information and documentation, but lacks the capability to resolve discrepancies in data and conclusions. All philosophical arguments sound convincing on their own. Although reason is highly effective in a technical world where the methodologies of logic dominate, reason itself, paradoxically, is the major block to reaching higher levels of consciousness. Transcending this level is relatively uncommon in our society.
So, because our society is so left brain oriented, this is again, we still are getting stuck at the left brain. So even at this level, at the level of reason, we are not yet moving to the right side of the brain. We are still stuck on the left side of the brain, right? And because of that, we are stuck in the concepts. We are not seeing the whole picture yet. We are still working in the materialistic side of things, not going into further expanded states. Okay, so this becomes very important because transcending materialism, only when we transcend materialism do we go into spiritualism. So transcending this level of consciousness is generally not happening because people are stuck with the materialistic aspect, acquisition at the material level, be it of information, be it of knowledge, be it of material things. We are still in the process of acquiring knowledge, right? So in the Vedanta talks also it is said, get rid of the materialism, get rid of all attachment. So any kind of attachment will still keep you here. So moksha nahi milega. If you're operating at reason also, moksha is not there because you're still stuck with the material stuff.
Energy level 500, love. Love as is not what this level is about. What the world generally refers to as love is an intense emotionality combining physical attraction, possessiveness, control, addiction, eroticism, and novelty.
Okay, so now when you look at love from this angle, all the things that he said, emotional conditions, combining physical attraction, possessiveness, control, addiction, eroticism, and novelty, these are all in the lower levels of consciousness, right? I have a very beautiful wife, pride. If someone starts to talk to my wife, I'll get jealous. Okay, so I will go into anger. It's a lower level. My wife leaves me and goes away. I'm in love with my wife, but my wife leaves me and goes away, I will go into shame, or I will start feeling guilty, right? So again, we are connecting with a lower level of consciousness when we look at love from the normal way that we look at love. Here, the way that they're talking about love is a spiritual love. It's a different kind of love. It's not the normal way that we look at love. Okay, so it's a totally different kind of a love.
It is usually evanescent and fluctuating, waxing and waning with varying conditions. When frustrated, this emotion often reveals an underlying anger and dependency that it had masked. That love can turn to hate is a common concept. But what is being spoken about them, rather than love, is likely an addictive sentimentality. Hate stems from pride, not love. There probably never was actual love in such a relationship.
So this I've already said, right? That when you're looking at that lower kind of love, it can immediately take you down, right? Now, when there is actual spiritual love, there will be no anger. You will release. There's no attachment, right? There's a feeling attached to it, and that feeling is more important than that. That feeling of possession, of possessiveness. We transcend possessiveness in this level, right? But at the lower levels, we are attached. We don't transcend we have not transcended the material attachment to that particular thing.
The 500 level is characterized by the development of a love which is unconditional, unchanging, and permanent. It does not fluctuate because its source within the person who loves is not dependent on external factors. Loving is a state of being. It is a way of relating to the world which is forgiving, nurturing, and supportive. Love is not intellectual and does not proceed from the mind. Love emanates from the heart. It has the capacity to lift others and accomplish great feats because of its purity of motive.
So now, what are we doing now? So we've been always talking about the jugalbandi between the head and the heart. When the feeling and the thought start moving together, only then manifestation takes place. So here, up to the level of up to the level of reason, right? That was at 400. We are talking from the materialistic side, that is the logical side of the brain, the left side of the brain. Now we are shifting into the right side of the brain, which is connected with the heart, right? So when we are operating at this level, there is there is no attachment left. Definitely, it doesn't fluctuate. You love the person, right? You love the beingness of the person, not what the person is doing for you. Now, if the person stops doing for you at a lower level of consciousness, if you are in love with the person, you will start to fight with that person. You'll start to hate that person. It is very clearly said also, that love turns to hate very easily. Why does that do that? Because you're operating at a lower level of consciousness. If you really love a person from the level of 500, then it really doesn't matter what that person is doing for you. That person may be out to hurt you and harm you, but you will still keep loving that person, right? So that stability starts to come. That stability in love starts to come at this level. So you're totally forgiving, you're totally nurturing, you're constantly looking out for the other guy. The self-centeredness starts to drop away at this level of consciousness.
At this level of development, the capacity to discern essence becomes predominant. The core of an issue becomes the center of focus. As reason is bypassed, there arises the capacity for instantaneous recognition of the totality of a problem and a major expansion of context, especially regarding time and process.
Now, this is important. right? So instant recognition of the totality of a problem and a major expansion of context. I always tell excursion graduates and graduates of the 6-day programs that you're going to start hearing yourself say, "I told you so," right? What does that imply? It implies that you've already seen the bigger picture before the others have seen the picture. So you've already taken the gestalt, you've already taken the context, you've taken the core of the problem or the situation or the issue, and you're already on it, right? The others are still contemplating on it. So over here he says instantaneous recognition of the totality of a problem. So when we start operating at these levels, we automatically get, okay, this is the problem, and this can be a great solution. Okay, this is what starts happening at this level of consciousness.
Reason deals only with particulars, whereas love deals with wholes. This ability, often ascribed to intuition, is the capacity for instantaneous understanding without resort to sequential symbol processing. This apparently abstract phenomenon is in fact quite concrete. It is accompanied by a measurable release of endorphins in the brain.
So when we look at brainwave patterns also, of course, the chemicals like endorphins, that feeling of a high, that feeling of euphoria is released when we are operating at these levels of consciousness. This is a given. But when we look at it from the brainwave pattern perspective, you will either be going into an awakened mind brainwave pattern or a evolved mind brainwave pattern, where in the awakened mind, there is a ratio at which the beta frequencies, the alpha frequencies, the theta frequencies, and the delta frequencies come up, right? And the evolved mind, what happens is these frequencies start to conjunct, they start to form a whole, right? It forms a beautiful circle in the brainwave pattern scenario. Now, these are things that if you are hooked onto the mind mirror, you can actually see this happening in screen. So what we can actually do using mind mirror as a training device, as a biofeedback tool, we can actually see what states of consciousness will take us into these states, right? And by practicing, whichever practice we are practicing will result in us going into these evolved states of consciousness. That's why I always say that what took me 25 years to do in the excursion workshop, you do it in 2 days time. You start feeling it in 2 days, because the Monroe processes really take you or give you a taste of these levels of consciousness. And then once you know it, it becomes easy for you to access it at a later time. I'm not saying that, I mean, people like us, we are constantly evolving and growing, right? But we can at least touch those places and come back. And the more we start touching those places, the more we start being in those states of consciousness, the more those states start becoming permanent for us, right? That is what the shifts that we are looking for. If you see most people who've attended excursions, they'll say they're less irritable, they're able to see the bigger picture. Stuff which used to irritate them doesn't irritate them anymore. They're able to handle things better. They are more organized. The thinking process has become more systematic. All those things start to happen. How does it happen? It happens because we are starting to touch higher states of consciousness on the consciousness scale.
Love takes no position and thus is global, rising above the separation of positionality. It is then possible to be one with another, as there are no longer any barriers. Love is therefore inclusive and expands the sense of self progressively. Love focuses on the goodness of life in all its expressions and augments that which is positive. It resolves negativity by recontextualizing it rather than by attacking it.
So again, changing the perspective of how we are looking at something. Rather than putting something down, we change our perspective about it. So the bad thing becomes a good thing, right? Love is all inclusive. You start looking at the whole, always looking for the greater good rather than your own good. You start including people in everything that you're doing. That is where love actually operates from.
This is the level of true happiness. But although the world is fascinated with the subject of love and all viable religions calibrate at 500 or over, it is interesting to note that only 0.4% of the world's population ever reaches this level of evolution of consciousness.
Right. So if a religion has to work, it has to calibrate above 400. If it goes below, above 500. If it goes below 500, then you're moving back into the logic, right? So acquisition of wealth, acquiring properties, keeping the flock together, all those things will start happening. But when you're operating above 500, we say 500 or above, right? Then there is no acquisition required. तुमको आना है तुम आओ, नहीं आना है मत आओ. Doesn't matter, right? You're not hankering after stuff. So that thing starts to clear up, right? And over here it clearly says that only 4% of the population will ever touch the level of 500, right? Anyone, anything to add or say? I'm going to close